Hello everybody, I want to take you back to 1969 for the madness of Tyne Deck. Now, as we've already seen, the 60s and 70s featured some crazy concrete structures, many of which have long since been demolished, but one, thankfully, didn't happen. Now you probably all recognise the Newcastle quayside. It is beautiful with its bridges, and it's known worldwide. In fact, it came number 1 in Lonely Planet's best places to visit, and there are many YouTube videos saying Newcastle is one of the best cities in the world. Now imagine that in 1969, that view was destroyed, because we're talking about Tyne Deck. This was an insane plan to concrete over the River Tyne and join Newcastle and Gateshead with civic buildings in the middle, proposed by madmen architects Rader and Yates. This would have involved demolishing much of the beautiful quayside and using concrete to cover over the river. They would have achieved what the giant explosion of 1854 failed to do, and wipe Newcastle's famous quayside off the map. Now at this time, Newcastle quayside was severely run down, and they claimed that doing this would bring life back into the area. Now this idea wasn't something unique. Some of the cities have concreted over and buried their rivers, including Bristol. And indeed, Newcastle does have some buried rivers which run underneath it. But burying the River Tyne would prove to be incredibly controversial. Looking at pictures of the quayside around the time that this was proposed, dead industry, old railway lines and boarded up buildings, it was difficult to know what would fix this, and if there was even a future for this area of the River Tyne. Part of the idea would have been to turn the Tyne into a non-tidal lake that could be enjoyed throughout the year. At this time, the river was heavily polluted and smelt awful. It's said that if you fell in the river during this time and you inhaled water, you would have to go to hospital and have your stomach pumped. So you can see why some people might have wanted to rejuvenate this area of the city and remove the site of what was considered a terrible river. But, thankfully, the plans didn't go ahead. However, models of the plans and designs still remain, and recently the Baltic Art Gallery put it on display showing this scheme and the plans involved in it. Fortunately, in the 1970s, the tide turned and the buildings on the quayside were listed and protected. Then, gradually, during the 70s and 80s, the area began to improve. Industry was demolished, rail lines were lifted, and buildings were restored. By the 1990s, the quayside of Newcastle was beginning to get the reputation for a party area. Large pubs and clubs were put into the derelict warehouses, and an old ship was converted on the Gateshead side to create a floating nightclub, the Tuxedo Princess. And for a while, the quayside became Newcastle's hottest night spot. But when more of the warehouses started to be converted into luxury flats, the party couldn't last forever. Complaints from the local residents about rowdy behaviour rose, and the area started to go downhill. The attraction of converting these pubs and clubs into more residential housing was too good to refuse, and the area in the noughties gradually became a nicer, quieter place, with small local pubs providing the entertainment, and the poor Tuxedo Royale now rusting away on the River Tees. Newcastle quayside is now a beautiful, restored area, welcoming thousands of tourists every year. But if Tyne Deck had gone ahead, this could be a very different story. If you want to discover more about Tyne Deck, see more photos, and read more information on the history of it, I've put some links in the comments below. Thank you for watching and subscribing if you have done so. I hope you enjoyed this brief history of the quayside and the photos included. Of course, there are always more on our website. If you're interested in the giant explosion that happened on the quayside in 1854, there is also a video on that. Right, I've got to get to work on scanning more slides, so I'll see you in the next video.